As Caleb's alluded to already, thanks everyone for joining and taking some time out of your lunch break. First off, I'll just introduce myself, equity crowdfunding and the Greensquare guys before they sort of run through a little bit of a presentation, and then we'll have time for some questions at the end. But if you have any questions throughout, please just put them in the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we can get to them at the end. So starting off, I'm Zach. I'm one of the deal managers here at On Market. We are assisting Greensquare with their equity crowdfunding offer. They're looking to raise to basically grow their business. Only launched a couple of months ago and already have some great traction, which they'll run through shortly. So for sort of the uninitiated, equity crowdfunding is a capital raising regime that enables companies to advertise and enable retail investors to invest in companies and become shareholders. So they'll own equity, become a shareholder and share in the growth of the business. So the reason we're all here today, Greensquare's equity crowdfunding offer. I'll introduce you to Caleb and Chris, and they can take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Zach, for the short intro there. My name is Chris, and I'm the CEO of SquareX. And alongside here we have Caleb, who is the general manager of managing director of Greensquare. And first of all, thank you very much for expressing your interest in investing in our business, which is a great honor. And also attending the webinar today. So today what we'd like to do is we'd like to show you a little bit more about what we do, about what the market looks like, what challenges it's facing at the moment, and what we're trying to solve. So we're super stoked about having a whole broad of different people on board. So we have a whole lot of existing investors from the space, so who are coffee professionals, either from the buyer or from the seller side. But then also we have a whole lot of people on board who are not really from the coffee space, but other sides of business, or maybe in other industries that face similar challenges. So what we do throughout this presentation is we start out with a little bit of a background of what the industry looks like, what's the status quo, what I mentioned just now, like what kind of challenges it's facing, and really where we see our technology solving the problems and essentially elevating the entire supply chain. But one thing I would like to mention beforehand, before we get started with the actual presentation, we're particularly excited about having such a broad range of investors on board. The reason why we've chose crowdfunding is because we believe that in order to elevate the supply chain into the digital age, it takes a whole lot of pair of hands. And we're quite honored really to have so many backers in that space. In fact, we have existing users investing or expressing their interest to invest who are buyers or coffee roasters, and where we have people investing, expressing their interest who are actually sellers. So it's really exciting to see that both parties have expressed their interest to join us in this race here. So I hand over to Caleb now to start off with a presentation, a little bit of background.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Chris. So yeah, as Chris said, guys, just from my side, thanks again for coming along today and expressing your interest. It's been really exciting for us. For everyone on the session today, as Chris mentioned, there's a range of different experiences and interactions with coffee, whether we're in the industry or we're someone who enjoys coffee and is interested in understanding more about the supply chain and what we're doing with Greensquare. So we all love our coffee. I'd like to say either we love it or we know someone who does, and we interact with coffee really regularly. So it's important to understand the challenges it faces. The world coffee market is growing. In 2021, it was already valued at just over $50 billion, Australian dollars, that is. And it's expected to reach 76 billion by 2030, with a particular high growth in our specialty high quality coffee sector, which us as Aussies love, but is growing and growing over the world, which is awesome. It's really important to understand that there are high risks, there's intense costs that are facing our coffee supply chain and the key stakeholders. So we want to take you through a little bit about what it looks like to actually source and manage coffee at the moment. Coffee is grown around the world. Coffee is then imported into consumption countries such as Australia. And this process is handled by what we will refer to as importers or traders in the coffee sector, who are sourcing, tracking, and funding the movement of this coffee over the months for it to arrive with us. On top of this, they have to then store, manage, and track and sell all of this coffee to all the different roasters in their market. Currently, this is done using multiple different softwares that are off the shelf, like CRMs or ERPs, or even using PDFs or the good old-fashioned Excel spreadsheet. All of these sources really do require a heavy customization, maintenance, and a cost to upkeep, whilst lacking in connectivity and creating that fragmented and disconnected data sets and communication channels between these importers, traders, and their customers, the roasters. So for a roaster, on average, a roaster in Australia is working with 4 to 6 different importers to manage their purchasing of coffee. And they do this to reduce their risk and increase the variety and quality of their product. But now let's jump through and have a little look about what does it actually look like for a roaster to source coffee right now. So at the moment, a roaster is sourcing their coffee via PDFs, different static websites, or emails and lists that they have to kind of collate all of these coffees together. This is what we describe as the first stage of a procurement process. They're contacting separate importers or traders via email, websites, all these different forms to then try and collect these coffees, which are hundreds of products, to compare and find what is perfect for them and their business to select. Once pulling all this information together, it is very varied, as you can see from the display here, where the product is, what information it is. If it's a static listing, I might not have the most live and accurate information when I'm needing to make my decision. So this trend of fragmented and inconsistent and to be honest, time-consuming work for both the roasters and traders, it continues from this top stage of procurement all the way through from then sampling and testing products, negotiating, quoting, and then finally booking and even ordering these coffees. Every single stage is fraught with fragmentation and inconsistent data and time-consuming heavy resource requirements. With the post-purchase stages being widely managed through like individual spreadsheets. So once purchased, both parties are managing on these individual spreadsheets, trying to track the product and to say, okay, we've bought 6 containers of this coffee and we're both tracking the drawdown and ordering of it in separate environments, which can naturally create challenges. But guys, as you might know, that's where we come in with Greensquare. Greensquare allows Australian coffee roasters the ability to access right now over 450, maybe 500, I didn't check this morning, but it is growing, which is awesome, different coffee products from over 10 different importers or suppliers. And this is all in one platform and one place. So drastically, since our launch in late February this year, drastically being able to reduce the work required for roasters to be able to find the right coffee to meet their needs, along with being able to narrow down these products and compare products like never before. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. For what our roasters can achieve on Greensquare with a suite of procurement tools, allowing them to manage the entire process from their sampling, negotiating, contracting, and ordering to live inventory management, removing these separate and siloed environments they would be experiencing currently and allowing them a single source of truth for both to view and track. This is aiding them in removing risk, costs, and labor that has been fraught through the supply chain up until now. For our traders using the platform, they have access on Greensquare to the largest pool of verified coffee roasters, immediately removing all of the friction and work required to vet and onboard a customer, as well as allowing them this like key and complete sales process. So removing friction that is caused between fragmented communication channels and misunderstandings of expectations from a customer during this key sales stage and this management stage. So guys, I've rambled on a little bit there, but what I'd like to do now is I'm really excited to actually show you a quick recording, just a 2-minute little video to show you what does Greensquare look like and what are some of the capabilities for our users on the platform right now. So I'll click this through. So when a user first logs on to Greensquare, they land here on their dashboard. Both roasters and importers have their own unique dashboards, showing them all of the activity and interactions they're having on the platform, and a quick overview of anything that might need to be actioned from the platform. But here we're on a roaster's example dashboard in our staging environment. So let's have a quick look at what it looks like to source a product. So here, once in the source area, we have a quick search bar where as a roaster, we could quickly select the coffees we're looking for. And then with 5 clicks, we now have access to over 500 coffees from 10 different suppliers with just 5 clicks, which previously would have taken up to 30 different emails to access all of this information in separate PDFs or access to websites or links where it's hard to collate, compare, and understand the differences between these coffees. Right now in Greensquare, we give our roasters the ability to do this in just 5 clicks. They then have the opportunity to use more filters and to actually narrow that search down using all of the information about these products to find the perfect coffee for their requirements every single time. We also allow them to do a range of other things to handle their entire procurement process all the way through. So in samples, they can now have a live visibility of all the samples they've requested from all different suppliers, seeing status updates. Just the same in their quoting process to see all the quotes that they've requested from different suppliers and being able to quickly review the details and the differences between quotes to ensure they're finding the perfect coffee and actioning it in a timely manner. Once a quote is accepted, the platform automatically generates a digital contract, allowing a roaster to sign immediately and action that product. One side, it generates a position, allowing both the buyer and the seller, so the roaster and the importer, to have visibility on the same information as it is being drawn down over time and the status of that drawdown according to its contract requirements. Removing miscommunication and friction between roasters and importers, no longer having to manage separate Excel spreadsheets or separate inventory management softwares that don't communicate, and allowing them a single source of truth to understand where they're up to with their products at every single stage. So Greensquare as a platform is providing the digital foundation for the coffee supply chain, allowing roasters and importers the visibility and connectivity to reduce risk, resources, and friction in their procurement process. Alrighty. So I'll still never get used to watching myself on camera. So that was a very awkward 2 minutes for me. Thanks for dealing with that one, everyone. But let's jump through, guys. That was just a good opportunity for me to be able to share with you what it actually looks like for our users. But it's important now to also understand what are the competitive advantages for us at the stage we are as a company. So Greensquare was always built with a strong foundation with our key stakeholders in the supply chain, working with them on a pure focus of collaboration around creating a digital future for our coffee supply chain that is not for an individual or an organization on its own, but for our entire industry. We see our unique deployment strategy, of launching not one global platform, which can be filled with irrelevant products or irrelevant participants, but rather deploying in what we describe as fixed consumption markets, such as Australia, allowing us to provide our users with access to relevant products, relevant partners, along with a controlled rollout program for us to be able to provide as much value in this stage as possible. We also have seen, we've seen trends in the sector around successful ingrained platforms proving quite sticky for their users and proving quite hard to be replaced or removed from the market. For the road we have traveled as a company in our journey, we hold a strong position in the market as the coffee industry's first ever complete B2B multi-seller platform, which is really aiding us in our competitive advantages. So guys, that's a little insight from my side. To go a little bit further in this, I'd like to pass over to Chris now to take us through some of our tractions and progress we've made since our launch.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. So this is actually quite an interesting one because when we first started a couple of years ago now, so when we basically first started to conceptualize Greensquare and to talk to different people in the industry, it became very clear that there's a need for it. I think initially we asked about 120 different parties, so roasters and traders, hey, what do you think in 5 years from today? Do you think there's still going to be the same kind of email, WhatsApp, chat, PDF kind of interactions to manage the procurement process and then not really action any kind of contracts directly because they're done in Word and so on? And about 90% says, no way this is going to happen. Certainly we're going digital and certainly this is going to go through some kind of platform. So initially, we really got this strong feeling that, yes, the industry is changing. So just from an isolated view in the industry, we kind of felt like, yeah, there's definitely something happening. There's a lot of energy about expected change, and it's going to be quite drastic. So what did we expect there? Obviously, change is hard. So when we made our early projections, now these ones here from early 22, so we basically looked at our old projections there. What did we expect for launch? And we thought, well, we see a lot of appetite here, but change is hard. So we thought, okay, we would be lucky if we get about 80 roasters on board for launch, and then maybe 4 traders, if we are lucky, even though we have very strong links in the industry, very strong network throughout the country. But I mean, change is not easy. So we thought it's going to be around that much. And then fast forward at launch, I think we're sitting at about 180 or so roasters, and we had about, I think, 7 traders or so. And now a couple of months later, we are at 240 roasters. I think probably a couple of them more now. This is a couple of days old. We have new signups pretty much every day, and then also a lot higher demand on the supply side. So we're really excited about that. Also, what we found is that there's a huge appetite for collaboration across other players in the market. So, for example, we have a collaboration in place with Cropster, which is a very large roasting software provider, and then a few others. And in fact, we get actually a lot of requests about, hey, I see what you're doing there. I see how that can help the entire industry. And I can see how my solution can reach a lot of people at once. So we'll touch back on that in a little bit. That's what we call the digital foundation, which is basically opening up access to a whole lot of different solutions and access to the digital foundation, which is Greensquare, a strong place where data can be shared across the supply chain. So a lot of parties benefit from this. Also, what we can observe, and we've recently had a trip to the US, to especially Coffee Association's expo in Portland, Oregon. And that was kind of like expected, but still very encouraging to find evidence that, yes, there's a lot of demand from overseas to actually have a similar solution there. So in the US, for example, in Europe, Asia, and even the Middle East and Africa. So we had people signing up from almost all continents now. And unfortunately, we have to tell them, hey, we love your interest, but unfortunately, we haven't launched in your region yet. So definitely a lot of interest, a lot of demand for the solution. So why do we need to do the raise? Well, a big part of that is actually because we haven't anticipated this much demand in new organizations wanting to use Greensquare. So therefore, a large part of the money that we raise is actually used to support that growth. So we need a lot more hands on deck to actually allow those new users a better onboarding experience, because currently we're just restricted by time, really. But that's one big thing on the roadmap, to provide our users with a very strong onboarding experience to get the best out of Greensquare. Now, another question that pops up quite frequently is like, hey, how do you actually earn money? How do you make this viable? And there's a lot of different ways that can be done. And we have mapped that out in 3 stages, essentially. So first of all, as Caleb mentioned earlier already, and that's a little bit of a non-romantic term, but we create a lot of operational efficiencies through the solution. So we save a lot of time, we reduce a huge amount of risk, we add convenience. So there's a whole lot of different things that how we create value by supplying Greensquare to the industry. So the first thing that we do is essentially capturing that value through a transaction fee, which is relatively modest, because again, it's all about efficiency. But then at the same time, we're capturing a huge market. So the numbers make sense there. The second thing is the SaaS fee. So the opportunity to charge different parties for access. That can be either the seller, simply by having access to this huge market, essentially saving a lot of resources from their end in, for example, softwares that they have to maintain otherwise internally, or they would have to increase the size of the sales team to kind of reproduce a similar reach to the market. So there's a whole lot of operational efficiencies there. And we already know that the market accepts both the transaction fee that we propose and potential SaaS fees for that part of the market. Now, in the second stage, we are looking at additional opportunities that we can offer to our users. That's first of all, simply by having a large reach to a lot of buying organizations. There's an opportunity to promote listings, for example. So it could be like a promoted listing, as we know from elsewhere, but also then there's an opportunity to offer premium features. And Caleb has touched on that very briefly already. There could be something like an advanced warehousing system that is essentially like an on-premise warehousing module that we can provide. Could be something like a blend planner, so really like a tool that gives you insight about the actual cost of your blends. That's super important for coffee roasters to have live pricing about that, but also have visibility into the future to understand when are my contracts actually running out, where do I have gaps, when do I need to fill that. That's another opportunity. But then also other things like integration into a whole lot of different softwares. For example, I've mentioned those already, like a roasting software, for example. And here our vision as well, if we manage our contracts on Greensquare, we can then just request a delivery, and that pushes that straight into that software, essentially eliminating the requirement for manual input, but also eliminating the opportunity for any kind of errors that can happen along the way. And then the third stage, and I've touched on that very, very briefly, that's essentially the opportunity to offer the platform for third-party providers. It could be something like, kind of like a buy now, pay later solution for B2B, which is seems to be coming, but also things like logistics, booking containers, perhaps, a whole lot of different things that can be done there. And we have received a lot of interest from third parties saying, hey, I have a solution for the B2B supply chain. I don't know where to place it because I don't have the infrastructure to actually place it in one place, integrate, and then reach a lot of different customers. And naturally, they usually see that in Greensquare because we have the digital infrastructure, digital foundation to input or to plug in different solutions. So there's a whole lot of opportunities arising from that as well. And finally, we have our auctions and tenders, but that's something we touch on another day. Okay, so what's the bigger picture? How are we, what's the plan here? So the plan really is that we start out with the square, and that's the name of our company, Greensquare. So the square is basically where people meet and interact. Think of a market square. So people meet and interact, and they discuss different products. They talk about it. They communicate. They negotiate. They enter contracts. They order. They make agreements of commercial nature. That's kind of where they meet in the square. But what we do as well, and this is extremely important, is that for the first time ever, really, we create captured structured data so that we can actually capture the data about products, about interactions, organizations, users, and we capture them in a structured format. Structured because this way we can utilize that for other things, and that has never really been done before. Individually, in a siloed fashion, organizations may have a CRM or they may have a structured customer database, but they're not connected along the supply chain. And this is really key for us because what we believe will happen in the future is that supply chains are going to be connected. And that view is supported by a recent report by McKinsey, for example. And they claim that, well, the biggest revolution in agricultural supply chains is going to be digital. It's going to be digital transformation. And for that, we need two things. We need digital innovation, could be something like monitoring, sensoring kind of technology. It could be IoT technology. It could be warehousing technology and all kinds of different things. But what's really important for any of this is to have connectivity throughout the supply chain. There needs to be a connectivity. And that's what we mean by our digital foundation. So we create a platform for structured data to be passed along the supply chain. And what we can create by that is the infrastructure required for any kind of other innovation that pops up in the supply chain. So this is, by the way, not something that we only see in coffee. we also see that in other industries. So we've been actively approached by quite a few different industries, and probably the clearest interest that we see is from other agricultural organic products, such as grain, for example. So there's exactly the same problem existing in this industry. And we have very, very advanced conversations about using our software in their space, but that would be on a licensing model, perhaps. And actually, there were quite a few other inquiries about it. So, hey, we see what you do in coffee, and we really need the same solution in our industry. Nevertheless, we are pretty clear and focused that that's all well and good. We understand there's a whole lot of opportunities in other markets, in other geographies, but for now, the focus is Greensquare. We want to cement our position in the Australian market, really create a lot of value to users, and then we see what's out there.
Awesome, mate. Thanks for that kind of detailed insight into our traction so far, our commercialization structures and opportunities there, and as well as our big picture moving forward. I just wanted to take this opportunity, guys. You've had the chance today to see myself and Chris and listen to us talk about the project, but there are two other gentlemen that I think are crucial for me to introduce to you today who aren't able to be with us due to their location and time zone. But we are co-founders, myself and Chris, along with two other gentlemen, Marius and Jan, who you can see on the screen right now. Apologies. Marius and Jan make up our founding team, and it builds out our unique perspective as a founding team and our unique skill sets as a founding team as well. So myself with a history and traction in small business and the coffee industry, and a serial entrepreneur in that sector, with Chris, who has a background and a PhD in behavioral economics and finance. And then Marius, who is a full stack developer. And the only way I can describe Marius to everyone is we could not afford someone with his skill set, his capabilities, his knowledge of development to get to this point. So he's an amazing core partner of ours and co-founder to be able to allow us to build such innovative and kind of, to be honest, cutting edge technology, the way we deploy and kind of build out our system, which allows us to provide this complete solution. And then we have Jan. Jan has a background in digital transformations, working with startups in Germany and the German government about digitizing non-digital industries. And he's the glue between our software team and our front end. So I would be remiss not to give the boys a shout. They will be waking up in a few hours and be catching the recording of this. So thanks for your hard work, boys, and have a good day. But now, guys, let's head over to our Q&A section. I think a few questions have been coming in, so I'll pass back to you, Zach, and we can. We're excited to answer some of your questions, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Just encourage everyone to put their questions into the Q&A if you have any, and we can get through those. I guess to start, we do have a few questions that have come through the expression of interest page already. So I guess maybe to start, I know it's been publicised on social media, but you've obviously just done a coffee tour around Australia. It'd be good to, can you tell us a little bit more about that? And I guess sort of the key advantage that Greensquare has in offering that sort of coffee tour versus what's, I guess, currently in the market or not in the market.
Yeah, for sure. I can take that one. If it was on social media, it was probably my mug at the front of it. So apologies for that, everyone. But yeah, as Zach mentioned, we did run a national cupping tour is what we called it. So a key thing to understand, all of our coffee community on the call will understand this, but when we're purchasing coffee, we do a thing called cupping, which is about tasting and evaluating the coffee to know if it's going to meet our requirements to purchase. So the way this is done is when an importer brings in new products, they try and put these in front of roasters, maybe hosting individual events, and a roaster will either have to request samples from all of them or attend all of these individual events. The unique opportunity we have with Greensquare and our collaboration and our 10 different suppliers that we work with, we were able to actually create sessions that allowed them to put all of their coffees into one session, allowing our roasters to attend these sessions across the country, which we were able to have kind of sell out in each city, which was really, really exciting. And actually attend these sessions to taste 10 different suppliers, a big range of coffees in one session, and also to be dynamically able to action them. Rather than taste it and go, that tastes good, I'll send you an email. They were actually able to taste the coffees, scan them, and get access to them on Greensquare. it's really exciting in a sense of some of the coffees were limited availability. So as it's traveling halfway around the world and we're dealing with what we call like a pre-shipment, a sample amount, there may only be 1 kilo of this coffee that they've got to try and get in front of as many roasters as they can. By giving it to Greensquare, we gave them the opportunity to get access to them, and they were able to access these products before anyone else. So if they were at the events and they were scanning the products, they would get direct access to them before anyone else in the industry, creating a really unique opportunity to collaborate with our sellers and our importers, and also to create our roasters early access to some of the best and kind of freshest coffees coming into the country. So it was an awesome session. And if anyone hasn't been to coffee events, if we do them again, you guys have to come along. You get to drink lots of coffee, and then there's usually pizza and beers afterwards. So they're always a good time.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Caleb. Yeah, sort of really highlighting there the competitive advantage. And I'll sort of continue on that same train of thought. You touched on that there's sort of, I guess there are other players in the market, but no one's really doing what you guys are doing and offering a full solution. Why hasn't anyone offered a full solution in the past? And I guess what are the key sort of things that you do that the existing players just don't do?
Yeah, so good question actually, and this played a key role in our strategic decision making, actually very early on. And I remember we had hours of discussions on how to tackle this problem the best way. So there's a few players in the market that try to solve a similar problem, and that is giving more availability, more available products to coffee roasters. And the way some players have done it is they try to cut out the middleman, which always sounds a little bit overly simplified, how we call it. Sounds kind of romantic, right? So I can directly talk to the farmer. And maybe there are some cost savings involved, but at the same time, replacing traders or importers they do some pretty important stuff. So for example, they manage long-term relationships with growers. They engage in international law, which is really, really important. Imagine you have an agreement between a roaster in Australia and a grower in Ethiopia, and they have a dispute about a contract. What are you going to do? Send the coffee back? Or, right? Pretty hard to enforce contracts across continents. That's one thing, but also the cash cycle is pretty important. So traders, for example, typically have to buy the coffee pretty much in cash, then ship it around the world, warehouse it, and then sell it to roasters with terms. That's a long time. If you cut out that part, you would have to deal with that too. So international contracts, managing cash, but also managing long-term relationships is pretty important. So we view that as really integral parts of the supply chain, and we don't want to remove that. So our view on that was, well, let's not remove it, let's elevate it, which came in really handy because we didn't want to fight somebody who was doing a great job. So our decision was, well, let's work with the big traders, with the guys that do a good job, but give them the tools to make it even better, right? So that was kind of our strategy behind that. And then also another one was, rather than like, in addition to not cutting out the middleman, was, well, let's focus on consumption markets, because there were some players out there that tried to do a global platform for coffee, which is, again, sounds kind of exciting. But then if you look at the operational bits to it, let's say we are a roaster in Australia and want to research for coffee. Great, lots of different solutions, lots of different research results, but some of them are currently based in Helsinki or in, I don't know, Canada. That's not relevant for me as a roaster in Australia, right? It's in no way, because by the time the coffee gets here, it's going to be older and it's going to be more expensive because it's traveled around the world twice. So that's not really what we are looking at. Like we didn't find that is a feasible solution. So we want to create a market where we have lots of buyers, lots of sellers, and all the product that is there is relevant for them, right? So there's a lot of relevant conversation happening, and that's why we've decided to segregate into consumption markets. And that also allowed us, and Zach, you asked one specific question about a complete solution. Other solutions usually don't cover the contract part. And for us, that is one of the strongest parts, because we capture information from interaction, from negotiations, create a digital contract out of that, that is actionable and ultimately enforceable, because we are operating in one market where we have clarity around that. So we can actually enforce contracts, whereas a global platform has difficulties doing that. So they do not cover the contracting piece, which then means that effectively they're just like a message board, right? I have coffee, who wants it? I want it. So now we can talk through WhatsApp, right? So that is what we mean by an incomplete solution. And then finally, I'm sorry, I'm kind of keep rambling on, but finally, what is our competitor? Well, another competitor is Excel, because people are using that right now. Some people have spent excessive time to actually develop pretty impressive Excel spreadsheets. And that's honestly very impressive. And for some people, they may not really want to give that up, and that's fair enough. But what we offer is that connectivity, right? So our role is really to make their lives easier, to provide them with that connectivity and insight, and reduce their risk eventually. So we see as our competitors, other players that have attempted something similar, failing to offer a complete solution and enforceable contracts. And then on the other hand, legacy systems such as Excel.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Look, that sounds really good. Certainly sounds to me like you're on a mission to be a partner within the industry rather than removing players from the market, and you just really want to support sort of both sides of the equation through to ensure the best outcome for all of them, which is great. We do have a question that's come through. Just, are there plans to support traders and roasters interacting directly over the platform outside of that publicly visible for sale cards to coordinate forward purchasing and market / foreign exchange fixation?
Yeah, I might jump on that one if you don't mind, Chris. There definitely is. So we treat it in a different kind of stage process. It's all about the different types of purchases. So for the roasting and kind of coffee industry community on the call with us today, you'll understand there are different types of purchasing. You could be purchasing spot, which means the coffee has landed in country and is available right now, or you can be purchasing forward. And then there are a range of different types of forward contracts, which has been mentioned in the question there. So right now on our platform, we provide the solution to purchase what we call forward and spot forward contracts as well. The more dynamic, where it's a hedging off a market, is what we'd look to do in like a tender opportunity where a roaster can be working with the trader to dynamically manage that. We do have structures in place for these other purchase types, and we are working with an advisory board which is made up of individuals representing obviously the roasting and the trading community to understand the nuance of these contracts and these forward purchases. So they are on our charts for our deployment and our roadmap of deployment of features. But it is something that we haven't gone live with yet, to understand those nuances of actually moving a market, because we also have exchange rate is one metric, but then we also have the differentials for certain origins that need to be applied at certain times. But there is definitely a scope of works once we have this digital foundation to be able to provide these more dynamic, long-term, even multi-harvest contracts that a trader and a roaster can manage in the platform as well.
Yeah, and I think the question touched on foreign exchange, and that's definitely important. So for everybody who's not come from a coffee background, the foreign exchange market is pretty relevant in the coffee space, because obviously almost all the coffee is imported, meaning that it touches different currencies. So the foreign exchange market is relevant, but also other indicators such as the C price for coffee, which is basically the commodity price that is closely related to how most coffees are traded and determines their pricing. So our goal is really all about providing both buyers and sellers with the right information at the right point in time, plus then tools that make their lives easier. So for example, these kind of piece of information about, oh, how is the foreign exchange market moving, or how is the coffee price in general, how is that tracking over time? That is something we can put straight into the dashboard. So both parties really have deep visibility into that. And then when it comes to foreign exchange management, being a digital foundation, we can partner with third parties and actually conversation have already started about things like, well, we could facilitate transactions in different currencies as well. So for example, a trader selling in Australia and Australian dollars can then get a payout in US dollars. That's another possibility that the Digital Foundation offers.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. I'm just going to move into a little bit more of a focus now on your capital raise. Obviously in the EOI phase now, and I encourage everyone to register their interest so that they know when the offer goes live. We're expecting to go live with the offer in the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks. What is your intended use of the funds raised for this offer, and maybe then continuing on, sort of once you've done that, what's the sort of next 2 to 3 years look like for Greensquare and the SquareX technology, I guess?
Yeah, so the vast majority of that is allocated for actual supporting the growth. I mentioned earlier, our expectations were kind of like, yeah, well, our early expectations about how many users will be on board early have been surpassed quite dramatically. So there's a lot more users that need to be serviced. So we simply need more hands on deck. So we need more people supporting us. Eventually, people buy from people, right? So even though having built a pretty easy to understand, intuitive technology, it still requires a human component to it. So there still need to be people on the ground talking to users, helping them to onboard and getting the most out of the solution. So a big chunk of the proceeds of this raise will go towards supporting that growth in the domestic market. Another relatively sizable chunk will go towards the development of additional features. We've touched on some of those already. More sophisticated contracting tools, for example, tenders, auctions, and there will be integrations into other software providers. There could be something like a foreign exchange management tool or more sophisticated warehousing, right? So a whole lot of different additional features that create even additional value. And then the goal is with this raise to go towards being cash flow positive in Australia with Greensquare, and then essentially preparing our expansion into the US most likely. So at the moment, it appears that the largest number of expression of interest from overseas is coming from the US, and it's a big, quickly growing market too. So yeah, we're probably looking at expansion into the US in the next 2 years, but that would most likely be subject to another raise.
Excellent. And I guess I think we'll probably look to wrap up soon. So please, if you do have any questions, send them through the Q&A. Why would someone invest in Greensquare? You've obviously got a lot of roasters and traders already on board, and a lot of them have been attending your coffee events, and they're becoming users of your platform. What's in it as an investor or as a shareholder in Greensquare?
Yeah, I might jump on that one. So it's a unique opportunity. As you mentioned, we have been quite lucky to have really good traction from our industry and our community of supporters as users. The big thing for us was from the coffee sector, we're hearing the pain points and we're seeing a lot of these interactions. I've lost count of the times I've had a roaster go, I always thought there should be something like this. I always wish there was something like this. And a trader's like, oh yeah, I always thought there should be, this would be a great solution, but it was always in the too hard basket. And we've been lucky with our founding team and our diverse network of kind of collaborative foundation to be able to build this and to be able to start this journey. But we don't see the future of the coffee supply chain. As I mentioned earlier, it's not for an individual and it's not for an organization, it's for an industry. So we think it's important to provide this opportunity to join us on this journey and actually securing a digital future for the coffee supply chain, but also for the future of the coffee supply chain, because there are challenges facing our industry. There are challenges, I think everyone in this call would understand that the price of coffee's gone up, and it's something that we need to understand the challenges in our supply chains, which aren't limited to the coffee industry. As Chris mentioned, with our core technology that you will also become a shareholder in, there is applications for this in other agricultural trades, and the importance of transporting, tracking, and having clear communication and digital kind of history of a organic product is only increasing over this time. So we see it as a really kind of it's almost it's the start of an evolution into a digital trading space for agricultural sector, with the coffee industry being our leading market. And we're excited for you guys to join us in this. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Caleb. I think we will wrap it up there. Thanks everyone very much for attending. We will be sending out a recording of this in the coming days. If you do have any questions that come up after this, please feel free to send them through to us at On Market, support at On Market, or send them through to Caleb and Chris. And don't forget to make sure that you have registered your interest in the offer. Head to the On Market website, register your interest. You can ask questions there as well. And that way you'll be the first to know when the Greensquare offer goes live.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Savo. Zach, thanks for everyone who jumped on. And yeah, as he mentioned, reach out to us anytime, guys. We'll be in touch with everyone who's come along today.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.